Hey guys, welcome back to Minecraft The Lost Journals. Today we're reading chapter 11, which is titled The Locked Room is Mightier Than the Sword. Starts on page 98 and goes to page 110. If you guys have enjoyed this novel so far, make sure you hit that subscribe button for more Minecraft The Lost Journals. Without further ado, chapter 11. Freya had initially taken them to what Max and Allison had assumed was a kitchen in the fortress, as it held a secret door to the tunnel outside, as well as a furnace for cooking and few tables. But Max realized quickly that whoever and or whatever had constructed the fortress meant it merely as a storage room. That much was obvious when Freya led them out of the room. The glory of the great hall lay before them. I don't like to eat in here, she admitted. Oh, really? Why not? Max asked, sarcastically, his voice sounding tiny in the massive room. The ceiling created a cavern at least 30 blocks high, with a large carved blaze on a far wall. Around the blaze, a cascade of lava ran down the wall to flow into some other area, hopefully not in another place in the fortress, because this room was hot enough. Down the middle of the room ran a stone table that could seat at least 50 people, possibly more. The stone chairs were the only sources of color in the room. About 10 of them had colorful cushions on the seats, making those chairs stand out grandishly. Freya saw Allie touching one of the cushions. Yeah, I added my own touches to begin with. Found a stash of wool banners and repurposed them to make the cushions. You found a stash of banners in the nether? Allie asked, frowning. I figured someone from the overworld brought them, Freya said, shrugging. Who knows where the stuff comes from? Max had hoped that the Great Hall would be the only lava room. No such luck. When they exited the hall and entered an even bigger cavern, he jumped back at the steep drop into a river of lava below them. I call this the hub, Freya said, striding confidently onto a stone ledge only 2 blocks wide. It was the first step of a bridge that led from the hall into several directions, with a doorway at the end of each branch going into the sheer rock wall at the other end of the cavern. Oh, yeah, and the bridges were keeping them high, at least 50 blocks high, above a river of lava. Guess that's where the lava from the Great Hall went. So, where do all those doors go? Allie asked. Freya pointed to the leftmost door. That one goes to the living quarters. Bunny Biter and I sleep on a blanket on the floor in one of those rooms. Do you want to know the real proof that the nether is pure evil? She stepped out onto the bridge over the lava and kept talking, as if she expected them to follow. With nervous glances down to the glowing orange fire death below, they complied. If you try to sleep in a bed, you'll blow up as if you tried to snuggle with a creeper. Freya gave a quick glance over her shoulder at Allie, who was pale. Oh, crap, I'm sorry, but yeah, you'll blow up. If we sleep in a bed? Allie asked, her words slow, as if she was making sure she understood the meaning of each one. Yeah, I don't know what it is about this place. Can't sleep in a bed. Dad always said it was insta-death. Freya shrugged, not looking back at them. He could have been lying, but I really didn't feel like testing it. Kind of like testing it if a sword is sharp by trying to cut your arm off. Tell me again how I was not in my right mind when my parents died, Allie hissed at Max. Where are we going to sleep? On top of a lava raft? Max grinned at her. It would be warm at least. Second door, continued Freya, is the kitchen, and beyond that, the main living area. It's got a gorgeous balcony that looks out over the canyon, and that's where you make gallons of mushroom soup. Allie asked. That's right, Freya said. Their door is the one we're going to. That's the basement where the library is. Enchanting, alchemy, crafting, it's all done there. Wait till you see it. They reached the crossroads where the bridge branched, and Freya took the third path. Max looked down again at the rolling lava below them and hurried to keep up. Sweat beaded on his brow from the rising heat. What about that? He asked, pointing to where the last bridge on the right ended at 2 stacked blocks of netherrack. I'm pretty sure the spawn rooms are beyond there. We don't go there, Freya said. There are some bedrooms I don't open, but I made sure to clear out the basement, and we try to clean it every day. The stuff down there is too useful to keep locked up. They walked down a few flights of stairs. Max ran his hand along the stone wall, feeling the heat come and go as they went below the level of the lava lake. They reached the middle door at the bottom of the stairs. Freya held up a hand and gestured for them to be quiet. She placed a hand on the door for a moment and then took it off. Hot? Max whispered. Freya shook her head and put her hand to her hips, glaring at him. He got the message and stopped talking. She put her head to the door and listened, then frowned. She looked back at them and walked stiffly around, miming shooting an arrow. Allie nodded, getting it, and Max realized Freya was telling them there were skeletons inside. Freya pointed to Allie and then part way up the stairs, giving a little distance between her and the door. She pointed to Max and then at the door. She went to join Allie, who had already removed her bow. Wait, what did he have to point? That wasn't fair. Freya was a better fighter than he was. But the weapons. He had a new, possibly enchanted golden sword, and everyone knows the sword fighter has to get into the fight while the ranged fighters pick off the enemy from a distance. Why hadn't he picked up a bow? He drew his sword and moved directly in front of the door. The golden sword thrummed in his hand, and he knew he had chosen the right thing. He wouldn't have traded the sword for anything. Now he could hear it, the faint clacking sounds that the skeletons always made when they were hunting for prey. He put his left hand on the knob and gripped the sword tighter with his right. He gave a quick glance back and saw that the girls behind them both had arrows nocked, ready to let fly at the moment's notice. Max took a deep breath, opened the door, and with a primal yell, ran into the room. Bunny Biter streaked past him, tripping him, which saved his life. As he stumbled, a sword whooshed over his head as a skeleton by the door swung at him. Bunny Biter grabbed the skeleton's sword arm in her teeth and bit down hard, her weight dragging the skeleton's arm down. She took her head quickly, and Max took the skeleton's head off with the sword. He didn't pay much attention to the body, instead watching the head fly off into the room. He took a moment to appreciate his new sword, staring at the way the lava light glinted off the gilded metal. It really needed a name, he decided. Another skeleton lunged at him just as he heard the twang of the arrow. It was coming from inside the room, and it was headed for him. He fell against the open door, the arrow hitting the metal and ricocheting off. The air whooshed in front of him as the skeleton missed its swing, inches from Max's face. Max, get out of the doorway, Allie called from the hallway, exasperated. We don't have a clear shot. I hear you, he grumbled. Kinda busy. He slid off the door and toward the right corner of the room. He got a sense of how massive the room was. It was a long library with bookshelves and enchanting tables and more. It reminded him of the enchanter's basement, but bigger and more ornate. This one was also full of skeletons. How were they going to get through them all? He didn't have time to worry, though, since one was coming straight at him. But the dang wolf was under his feet again, and he stumbled and fell, his back against the wall and the skeleton above him, raising its sword to attack. He had no idea how he was going to get out of this one, but he tried to block the incoming blow with his own still nameless weapon. He felt a thrum of power when the swords connected and the skeleton flew backward into the crowd, where it was immediately shot by one of the girls in the hallway. The skeleton fell, and Bunny Biter ran up to it, grabbed its collarbone, and shook it hard. The skeleton was clearly down, so maybe this was just to make sure, or to get a snack before the thing disappeared. But the wolf dropped its prize and ran for her next target. Max clambered up, staring at the fallen skeletons. He was beginning to get an idea about the potential power his sword might be carrying. He kept away from the doorway to give the archers their chance to shoot straight into the room. 2 more enemies fell immediately to arrows, but then Max was busy again, dodging an arrow from a skeleton across the room. As much as he wanted to attack the one in retaliation, he had another in front of him to deal with. He swung his sword and connected with its ribs. It flew off its feet and backward, crashing into the attacker that had just fired the arrow. Oh, that was interesting. He focused on another skeleton, again testing his new sword theory. The skeleton was swinging a sword at him. Instead of landing a blow, he parried the strike, and when the weapons connected, the skeleton flew backward. This was fun. With renewed energy, Max waded into the melee, swinging at anything that moved, not trying to kill, but just to connect. Every time he touched an enemy, it flew backward, into the wall, or deeper into the room. Bunny Botter was having a party, gleefully barking and chasing the skeletons round as they ran from her, and going from fallen skeleton to fallen skeleton. She was rewarded with more bones as the walking undead fell. It was becoming almost a game. Bunny Botter kept the skeletons moving, the arrows flying into the room were taking down several, and the distractions allowed him to go on the offense, bellowing and swinging his new sword to knock back the monsters. We'll survive the nether. This is easy. The thought had barely formed in his adrenaline-filled mind when he heard Allie's cry of alarm. He didn't have time to register what it meant because he was distracted by the sudden piercing pain of an arrow sinking into his shoulder. Allison knelt over Max, who lay on the floor. Are you sure you don't have a cot or something to put him on? She asked. Told you what happens when you get in a bed here, Freya said, tossing a torch onto the wall and running for a brewing stand, just trying to make him comfortable. With what? Allie thought, but said nothing. She started reciting the rules of mob encounters that they had learned in school. Don't remove the arrow until you have a healing potion, she said aloud, and tore Max's shirt from where the arrow had pierced his shoulder. Carefully secure the arrow, she said, repeating the words of the next step. Brew a healing potion, she said, but Freya had that covered. She was still at the brewing station, red liquid bubbling in her glass beaker as she added ingredients. Keep an eye out for further threats, as you will be vulnerable during this time. She glanced around her. Bunny Botter was bounding through the room, gathering fallen skeleton bones and taking them to a corner. She couldn't dig here, but she clearly had a special place for her treats. I guess it keeps the place tidy. The wolf wasn't exactly keeping vigilant watch, but she was moving around the room a lot, so if there were any stray threats, Bunny Botter would run into them. Tell the injured what an idiot they are, she said, making up the rule on the spot. You are an idiot, she said. I told you to stay out of the doorway. What do you think of Bonebane? Max mumbled. Allison sat back staring at him. She was as happy to see him awake as she was confused by his comment. What are you talking about? My sword. He waved his uninjured arm to gesture at his hip, where his sword would have been. He dropped it when he fell, and it lay off to the side. Bunny Botter was sniffing it now. Needs a name. It's magic. That's what you're thinking about? Allison shouted. Max, you were shot. But did you see the sword? It's got a knockback enchantment, he said, excitement coming through even as he was whining from pain. You're impossible, she said. She stood stiffly and walked to where Freya was swirling the red liquid in a bottle. How's the patient? Freya asked. Fine, talking about his sword. Allison rolled her eyes. It is ready. Yes, Freya said, handing the potion to her. Between them, Bunny Botter walked backward as she awkwardly dragged Max's new sword away by the hilt. Freya held Max's head while Allison poured the potion into his mouth. Max choked at first, coughed, and then drank the rest. He sighed and lay back. Allison adjusted his head and his shoulder so his healing body could push the arrow out easily. The arrow trembled and jerked, and then rose out of Max's shoulder, falling to the side. He sighed again and closed his eyes. Let him sleep, Freya said, and sat down, leaning against the wall. I could use some too. Now that Max was all right, the adrenaline rushed out of Allison, and she began to shake. She tried to smoothly move from kneeling by Max to leaning against the wall by Freya, but it was closer to just falling over. She was glad the wall was there to catch her. Freya cracked an eyelid. What's with you? Are you hurt? I'm not used to so much fighting. And she closed her mouth with a snap. She didn't want to say it. And Allison closed her eyes so she wouldn't have to see Freya. I was the one that shot Max, she whispered. She waited for a blurt of horror, or an accusation, or a demand. She returned to her bow, or, well, anything other than Freya saying so, in a bored voice. But that was what she said. Allison opened her eyes and looked at her new friend, who rested with her head back against the wall. What do you mean? So I shot my best friend. I'm a monster. We were fighting. You told him to stay out of the doorway. You shot a bow into a melee. He got shot. Friendly fire happens all the time in battles. I never really thought about it, Allison said. Fighting clearly had some important details other than kill the monster and don't let the monster kill you. You shot him, but you also took care of him and made sure he got treatment. Now he's fine. She glanced at Max, shirtless and dozing on his back. I'll need to find him another shirt, though. Allison had nearly fallen asleep when Freya started talking. She sat against the wall, her butt nearly numb, her neck stiff from leaning back. But she didn't move when Freya's words jerked her out of her doze. It took her a second to catch up, but Allison quickly realized she was talking about her parents' death. To be honest, I didn't know what to do, so I did what was in front of me. She said she had stretched out onto the floor on her back, head pillowed on Bunny Biter, who had returned to them with a rib bone in her mouth and was happily chewing away. The slurping and grinding sounds were oddly soothing. All I could think to do was solve the problem I had at the moment. Freya continued, run from the mobs, get something to eat, find a place to rest. I didn't have time to look for the portal. Every time I thought about backtracking to find it, something got in my way. Usually a blaze, sometimes a chicken, Allison grimaced, the expression having nothing to do with her stiff neck. You couldn't think about the big picture when everything's so big that you can't pick out which one's important. You just deal with the little stuff. Because you can control the little stuff, Freya said, nodding. Yeah, Allison said. I remember. How long has it been? Freya asked. Allison thought. She hadn't really been keeping track of time, but the sheep had escaped 3 times, and they had ruined Max's mom's farm and Mr. Hatch's ranch, and there had been time for Max's mom to build and tear down the tower she'd made for Allison. A few months, maybe, she ventured. I'm not sure, really. It's been about 6 months for me, Freya said, although it's really hard to judge time down here. No, son, she glanced up toward the ceiling. That's one of the things I miss. I figured you missed a bed, Allison grumbled. Well, Bunny Biter is a good pillow and a good guard wolf, Freya said. I don't need much. Allison wanted to tell her she needed more than a mushroom farm and a wolf pillow, but didn't feel like getting into an argument. It's weird that we're so different, she said instead. Freya stroked the wolf's shoulder. What do you mean? We're dealing with the same awful situation, Allison said, and you're running through the nether on an adventure, and I just went to a friend's house in the woods and wondered whether I should fix the sheep pen or let them go. She paused and sighed, not ready to keep talking, but knowing she had to get this out. I've been so afraid and so sad, and compared to you, I've had nothing to worry about. Freya, you're so strong. You live in the nether. Nothing to worry about. You just said Max's family lived out in the woods, Freya said. Don't you still have to deal with the occasional creeper or skeleton? Certainly spiders. Although, Allison thought for a second and remembered the lava cave and the skeleton. She remembered the creeper that had blown up and ruined their portal. Well, yeah, but I didn't really think about that when it was happening. I only thought about what to do next to survive. I didn't worry about my situation. She still had trouble saying my dead family and my destroyed home. Sounds familiar, Freya said. The realization hit Allison then. Freya was afraid of confronting her own problems. That was why she was living in this incredibly dangerous world. Who worried about dead parents when deadly monsters were behind half the doors in your house? She felt conflicted. Part of her felt sorry for Freya, that she was unwilling or unable to deal with the emotional trauma, and part of her was kind of jealous that Freya didn't have to deal with it. Still, Allison didn't want to have to live in the nether to run away from her problems. No problem was that bad. I haven't thought about that. What would happen if this had happened to me in the overworld, Freya said. But we didn't really have a permanent home anyway. So I would probably be doing the same thing, just with better food and more company. And a bed, added Allison. And I don't know how I would have reacted if this had happened to me in the nether. Situations are unique that way, huh? You don't think you could have handled it yourself here if you'd been equipped? Freya asked. I guess you'll never know. And I hope you never have to. Allison laughed. The biter sound surprising even herself. Well, I'm without my family, and I'm stuck in the nether, so I guess I have more in common with you than I thought. We just got here in different ways. Guess you're right, Freya said. Come back with us, Allison blurted. When we find our way home, you can have a bed. You can have security, water, colors. Oh, I miss green, she added with a sudden surprise. And Max said, his voice thick from sleep. We have almost no lava compared to you. He sat up, blinking, rolling his pervasively injured shoulder, previously injured shoulder, that showed no sign of an arrow wound. Freya shook her head. No, I already decided this is my home now. She sat up and looked at the room that had recently spawned enough skeletons to easily kill them. But home isn't a place, Allison said slowly. It's wherever you are comfortable enough to sleep. Max made a face at her and looked pointedly at where each of them was trying to get quick, uncomfortable rest. She frowned and shook her head. No, I don't mean napping on a stone floor. I mean real sleep, where you don't think anything is going to kill you. Sleep where you're comfortable enough to sleep all night, where you trust the people with you, where you wake up happy and wanting to share breakfast, and then go and rebuild the garden you accidentally destroyed with lava yesterday. She missed Max's mom then and knew that she must be going mad with worry right now. That's weirdly specific, Freya said, closing her eyes again, but I guess I get your meaning. So, you'll come back with us? Allison had asked hopefully. No, Freya said, settling back into Bunny by her soft belly. And if you want to see exactly why I won't, go and look around this room and ask yourself if you could leave it. Now be quiet. I need to sleep. Freya, Allison said quietly. Freya cracked her left eye open and again and regarded her. I don't think we can find our portal on our own. You know the mobs and the terrain will die out there without your help, and we want to go home. Freya sighed and sat up, resigned to the fact that she wasn't going to get any sleep. I'll help you find your portal or another one, she said. After that, I can't promise anything, but we've got to sort through our loot and get some proper equipment first. That wraps up chapter 11. I hope that you guys enjoyed. And if you did, hit that like button, and I will see you next time.